We'll call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the October 19th, 2021 regular session minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, seconded by Mrs. Leo.
Sorry.
Mrs. Flammer O'Kane.
I want to amend that there was no technical report. There was a brief technical report that we had met on October 5th and reorganized.
Oh.
Under student committee reports.
You got it.
Thank you.
Any other edits? All those in favor of the motion to approve the October 19, 2021 regular session minutes as amended will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. I'll entertain a motion to approve the October 19th, 2021 executive session minutes.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Haggerty, seconded by Mrs. Barnacle. Any discussion? Edits? All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Bring us to our financial report, Mrs. Boyd.
Okay, we made it through another month. Yeah, nothing significant. The regular budget looks fine. The reminder towards the end, ESSER 1. ESSER 2, we did encumber the technology at this point in time that we planned, which is a combination of replacing smart boards and getting more Chromebooks. The commitment was we'd kind of wait till close to mid-year to make sure everything else is working okay and we don't need those ESSER funds for something else. I think we're okay. The smart boards, unfortunately, are the new Chromebooks. We place an order and there is a 4 to 6 month lead before they come in. So we did at least get that order going. So that's kind of the big encumbrance that you'll see under technology. And otherwise, I think we'll get through the year as planned, and I continue to just sort of keep an eye on the rural aid as we move through the year in case we need that to cover, as I've mentioned before, salary shortfalls or any other unexpected things. But otherwise, we're doing okay and working hard on the fiscal 23 budget.
Questions for Mrs. Boyd on the financial report? Seeing none, we'll move to our staff report. Mr. Wood.
Well, that just took me by surprise. I have to go through my notes now.
Lee has fun news, so I'm letting her go last.
Well, first of all, in the co-op report right now, you see 7 students are out on co-op. I kind of explained a little bit about the process, and it is a pretty involved process where Mr. Lamoth has to go out, do site visits, there's queries, we need to make sure the insurance is in place. What's really cool right now is we have about 4 to 5 kids who are in the queue for additional co-op, and we actually have, at this point, 2 juniors, because in the regulations for Chapter 74, second semester juniors can go out for co-op, and we've already had 2 students come to me to make sure they want to go out, and they already have the places lined up. So it's an incredible opportunity for kids to learn their skills. I don't want to step too much on Anna's, so she's going to talk a little bit, but the craft fair was this weekend, and I know that I did see some of you at the craft fair. It was a huge success. I want to thank publicly Mrs. Carrier for her organization. I'll give you a full report in next month, but Mrs. Carrier does a phenomenal job managing all of this. Mrs. Nelson, who is the co-advisor for Skills USA, Mrs. Espinosa for lining up all of the students, which was significant this year. I'm pleased, I would say about 97% of the people who came in and out of the craft fair, including vendors, all wore masks, so that was really good. But the people who came in without masks, the staff went to them and said, would you like a mask? And they put it on, no questions, which was really, really good. The student staff support was huge. It couldn't have gone as well. We had great staff support. with the teachers who came and volunteered for the day, and the students were amazing. And right now, between the table rentals, the space rentals, and if you want a space, it's $35. If you want a table, it's $45 in the space. If you want electrical, it's $55. Between that, the raffle, which brought in about $2,800, and that included the 2 sets of Adirondack chairs and the picnic table, and the food, we are going to be making about a little over $10,000 for Skills USA as a result of the craft fair, and that's just amazing. The Skills Capital Grant, just an update. This next week we will be getting in the charbroiler and the 2 ranges. That leaves us the 3 ovens coming in the next couple of weeks. And one of the things that was really neat was the teachers wanted to reconfigure the Cornerstone a couple of things with a new salad station, which is smaller, opened up space. And again, this is where the cross-curricular comes in. Mr. Mansfield and the electrical students came in, put in new receptacles, covered receptacles to make everything safer, and we're able to have a more efficient space in the culinary for a bake area because of their work. And I just think that's really cool. I know the last year's class and the current class are already looking at their gift as making a really bona fide reception area as you walk in, not just a desk in the middle of the foyer. And CAD has started to look at that in drawing the designs, and then the plan would be for carpentry and electrical in the future to build that. So that's, I always say it, I have the best job in the world, and that's what I get to see. I get to see kids doing stuff on a regular basis and just performing, and it's just amazing.
Mr. Sturgis.
Thank you. I wanted to go first because I thought Mark was going to steal one of my bullet
No,
points.
because I didn't want to.
So we did start, it's kind of, I don't want to say back to normal, but one of the pieces that I like around here is having the high school right across the street to build the transition for our kids in 8th going over to the high school. We started that process today, where our 8th grade class, back to in-person, went across the street to tour the tech and vocational side of the high school. Mr. Wood and his students/teachers hosted us to give a tour of all the trades offered, and as always, they did a fantastic job. The kids are, the students who lead the tours and work with our kids while they're over there are excellent. And in my 4 years here, minus last year when we didn't get to do it because of COVID reasons, they even did an awesome job virtually last year, but they just do a nice job hosting our kids, and it went very well. And they always know it went well when the kids come back and they sprint to the guidance department for vocational applications. So that was a positive of today. I believe there's a parent night as well tomorrow night for our 8th grade parents for the vocational, those interested in vocational. And stick with the vocational high school, big shout out to Mr. Lamothe and his electrical crew, because if you notice when you pulled in tonight, because it is pitch black on that side of the building and the lights are out, they're clearly not functioning at this time and will be repaired. But in the meantime, his crew of students did an awesome job of minimal disruption to our day. Obviously it makes noise to drill holes through the outside of the wall, but they did. The kids are unbelievable. They just come. It's like real, like adult employees. They come in, they work, and they got a nice job done. Put in 4 lights on the exterior of the building on that side, which is good for the long haul too, even when those are repaired, because the lights on that side will still be in place. So that's with the outside, and you probably didn't notice because it's pitch black at this time of night, but the side panels under the windows that used to be the faded old brown are all in the process, and that's completing our doors and windows project. And in the sunlight, it looks awesome. It's like on top of the doors and windows project, the brand new bright green panels under the windows makes it look brand new out there. And so the physical building itself, as you pull up, looks tremendous right now. And then the 2 big things going on inside the school in terms of students. Just this week, we've nominated and selected our Project 351 students that will be in your December packet when we get there, because the students have to accept the nomination first before I can tell you who they are. 3 of the 5 have already accepted, so that's good news. And it was actually nice to see in the senior scholar that one of the students is actually, who was connected to it, is still connected to it through their senior year. And then our food wars, which was just a regular food drive, we put a little competition in it to entice kids to donate foods. We're actually able to raise enough canned goods and collect 30 donated turkeys, which was our goal, to provide 30 Thanksgiving dinners for members of our families in our community. So all that work from our guidance department and our student council kids who helped facilitate benefits directly our own families. So we're in the process now of reaching out to families that we can support with Thanksgiving dinners and provide that to help them out, especially this year coming off the pandemic, and not everyone is completely rebounded, and it's a good year to be able to help everybody. And so that's what I have for this month.
Thank you, Mr. Sturgis. Ms. Joseph, we heard about Thanksgiving dinners, how about some football?
So we do have some football things. We did talk the last time about moving the football game. We are moving it to Wednesday evening, November 24th, at 5:30 p.m. will be kickoff. Prior to that, beginning at 2:45, we have our Hall of Fame induction, and they will be introduced at the start of the game at 5:30. We also have Powder Puff taking place before that, which Lorelai might speak about, but I do have tickets for everybody here for the football game for you if you'd like. So we are moving it so that it can be better attended, so our families can, who used to have to make the choice, and the players that used to have to make the choice to not go with their family to be there for Thanksgiving, same with some of our staff, that they can be there, Wednesday all together, that more of our students and fan base can come, and then on Thanksgiving, they can spend that time with their families. Especially this year, some of that time and downtime is really, really needed. Otherwise, we did a spotlight on the history department this month. A lot of great things going on with regard to the professional development that they've been doing collectively and individually. You'll see that there are some local things, state things, and then nationally recognized things that they are doing, which is fantastic. They also highlighted some of their project-based learning, which we thought was important to see some of the great things that they're doing and how they are taking the learning that they are doing and linking it with today, relative to today's world. So there are some great things in there to look at. We were very excited to bring some of what we used to have in the public back into our building in lots of different student events over the course of the last month. We certainly recognized our John and Abigail Adams Scholarship Award winners. We did that in a different way this year. Formerly, we would do it with an announcement at lunch, and then they would have a small assembly to learn more about that. But we did a breakfast for our students this year, and invited our central office as well to come over to join us to celebrate them. We are beginning to look at our program of studies and some of our things that we are getting ready for next year with regard to that, as well as other college career planning things. Together with student council has had some great things, which Lorelai will touch upon, but again, so happy to have had homecoming, which was outside. It went really well, and I think despite the concern that the weather was not going to agree, they danced their hearts out. The dancing kept them warm, except when they weren't in their dance circle a little bit. It was a really great night. Our student council has had some conferences that they've attended, so that's been nice for them to get back out there and reconnect with folks across the state. We had our National Honor Society induction take place as well, where families were able to attend. And then we also have had our performing arts group. They also had their first concert, which was fantastic. It was great to have, again, our families back in for that as well. Our athletic teams did really well this fall, and the boys and girls soccer teams did advance throughout competition. They have concluded their seasons, however, and our cheer team is still, our cheer competition team has gone on from SWICL to regionals and has now advanced to states, and they'll be competing this coming Sunday at states. So they did place first overall in SWICL, they placed 5th overall in the regionals, and they are moving forward to states on Sunday. So we're really excited for them and all of the activities that they got to do this fall. And we continue to honor our seniors of the month, and this year, one of our seniors of the month happens to be here tonight. That's Lorelai Soper. Our other senior of the month is Nicholas Collins from the 10th division. So we've had a really great month with lots of student activities, and I think that's been very encouraging to our student body to get back to some social events and some normalcy. And if you do want your tickets, I'll leave them over on the table later.
Questions for our principals? Mr. Haggard?
No, maybe more a question for our superintendent than our principals. Lee mentioned some of the project-based learning that's been going on. And I somehow, you know, as I read it, I'm envious because I'd like to see it. And I wonder if it would be advantageous for our communities as well to see the type of things that our kids are doing that they certainly don't get a chance to see it. And I was wondering if we had an agenda in the future. I guess I will address this to Deb. If we could maybe invite a couple of them to come in and share with us their project-based experiences.
Maybe that can be the part of the principal report at a
Right.
future meeting where
That would be great.
students send
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, give the presentation.
That's great.
Good idea.
All right, thank you, principals. We'll move to students. Lorelai, you want to go first? You're the student of the quarter.
I would love to. So we've had a very busy month this past October. We held our homecoming dance, which Ms. Joseph did, and we had over 640 students attend, so it was very successful. It was a harvest theme with lots of fall decorations, including donations of hay bales and corn stalks from the local farm, Westview Farms Creamery. I think they're based out of Munson. And pumpkins from Miss Lamoth and the Junior High Student Council. The Junior High Student Council also lent us some lights to help illuminate the court outside. So a huge thank you to them, and a huge thank you to our chaperones, administrators, and executive board who worked so hard to make this happen. On Saturday, October 30th, 4 delegates from the Student Council Executive Board attended MASC Officer Shop, which is a leadership training conference, and it happened at Middleborough High School. Evan Hemingway, a member of our board, is a delegate for the MASC State Board, and he was presenting workshops to other students across the states, while our other delegates participated in workshops run by other students as well. We have started our food drive in collaboration with NHS. Those drop-off days are going to be Thursday and Friday of this week, and the pickup day will be Saturday. We are also working with the Intergenerational Club for a warm clothing drive for the winter, and we just finished with the sneaker drive. And a big thank you to Tantasqua student Jake Rosen, who was coordinating all of that. Chef Pop has been helping us run Shack at home games, and it has been a great success. It's great seeing kids and families back on campus to enjoy Shack and to have students running it again. NHS just held their induction ceremony for the new inductees, and it was also a great turnout. Families were able to come and participate safely in this important event. And we are also planning on pushing our pep rally to the spring in order to accommodate everyone and to hopefully have a normal rally by then. Powder Puff is next Wednesday right after school, since it's a half day. People are creating teams of 12, and they'll be able to compete against each other to raise money for breast cancer awareness. And also for December, our toy drive will be kicking off soon. And yeah, lots going on. Thank you.
And our Booster Club was kind enough to provide lunch for our students, fall student athletes, and our students participating in Powder Puff next Wednesday. So they're giving that as well, which is very nice of them.
That's great, great update. Anna?
Hi, thank you all for having me here. So I wanted to start talking about the machine students right now. They are working with a new multi-axis machine. Students have successfully translated pencil sketches into 3D figures and being able to create them into physical objects. They're becoming extremely proficient in translating with these new machines, and Mr. Russo just wants to kind of shout them out for being able to learn it so fast and pick up on all the new coding for it. Our allied health seniors have started their clinical hours in Quabog at a skilled nursing facility where they treat a wide variety of patients. A majority of them are recovering from recent surgeries. They're focusing on special care with patients that may need feeding tubes or catheters, physical therapy, things like that. Juniors in allied health are focusing on infection control, almost in alignment with our current COVID status, through learning proper PPE preparations and not exposing yourself when taking it off, and how to put it on properly, things like that. Our carpentry seniors right now are working on a double garage in Sturbridge, as well as creating multiple sheds, a lot of the ones that you see behind when you're driving behind behind the high school doing drop-off. As Mr. Wood mentioned, CAD is focusing on new layouts, designs for the high school reception using various 3D programs to create it. Having students kind of envision what they would want to see, again, like walking into the high school rather than just a small desk on the side. They're really having fun with that, making the 3D designs, layouts, all that fun stuff. Electrical, the students this month basically focused a lot on the 8th grade tech tours. They created various games and electrical panels for students to use. They got to pull fake fire alarms to see the wiring and how things connect and work. They also did, they watched complex wiring light up various colored bulbs that matched up with some buttons, so a lot of the 8th graders had fun with that. They were able to engage with the tech. Business Tech has focused on a lot of new products that are being displayed in the store, which I have tonight. So we have a new sweatshirt, a full zip. T-shirt. This is the front, blank green back. And because a lot of us are driving now, bumper stickers. So they had a lot of fun with that. Students thinking about modern designs that everybody's going to want to wear. Our hospitality students have continued in our school restaurant providing table service, to-go service, and directly to the teachers' rooms. Culinary students are still receiving new equipment in the kitchen, having fun with that, assembling things. With the Cornerstone, they still run the back of the house. They're really taking it over, creating amazing dishes. Still using everything that's in season to update a new menu. Currently, we're using a lot of the pumpkins that we had with pumpkin bisque and pumpkin muffins. We used a lot of it at the craft fair as well, selling pumpkin bisque. So a lot of pumpkin right now. Pumpkin season.
Which, by the way, not to interrupt, were donated from your harvest dance. And the kids with Chef Pop cooked everything pumpkin in the world, and the menu this week is phenomenal. It's just, I don't know what I'm getting, but it's, that's interesting.
No, it's okay. IT continues to work with computers, new programming, and work throughout the school to help any teachers with any issues they have. Skills USA has continued to connect with Student Council through the Superintendent Advisory, Intergenerational Club, Student Council, NHS, to promote various drives, including the one for winter accessories. So the donations will be sorted and counted as of this week with Skills USA, and we will, after we are sorted and counted and cleaned and done everything that needs to be done, they will be distributed through centers in need in all of the 5 towns. So again, that time of need, giving back, especially to our families, people that are close by, working with our communities, and doing what we can. The craft fair was an amazing connection of all students that participated. NHS, Skills USA, and I know NHS sold out their pies. That was awesome. They flew. So our hospitality and culinary students provided the early bird breakfast that attracted many families and vendors, all of them. We served coffee, juices, teas, along with a full breakfast selection of eggs, sausage, bacon, pancakes, and various pastries, including pumpkin muffins. A coffee station was also set up in the foyer that sold delicious coffee cakes and like fudge brownies with chocolate chips with vanilla glazing on the top. Very, very good. I had a few of those. A to-go lunch service was also provided as customers had options of chili, mac and cheese, and maple pumpkin bisque soup, along with beverages. Everyone enjoyed the warm lunch as it was provided to all guests that walked into the fair, vendors, families, everybody enjoyed it. Carpentry students provided small goods such as tables, the big lawn chairs, the picnic tables, and other goods to be sold but gone out through the raffle. The student volunteer turnout was amazing. Vendors were easily guided to their station and assisted not only in setting up but breaking down as well. It was a really easy service. Students were able to connect with the community and really work with them hand in hand to help them promote what they love and help them, sell what they needed to sell. So yeah.
Great updates. Mr. Fitzgerald?
Is the Cornerstone Cafe fully open to the public again?
Not yet. We're working there as we kind of in leadership, we talked about overall how we're going to, but that's where we're going. Right now, it's just open to in-dining for teachers at this particular point, and take out for teachers, but that's a goal as we move forward, for sure.
It's a good reason to sub.
Because when you saw the menu, you'd want it to be
Well,
open.
that's what prompted the question.
Telling you.
Don't school committee get special privileges?
If you, Mrs. Barnacle, if you call me, I will give you personal curbside service.
And then it'll be on Facebook.
Yeah, I know.
And then I'd like pickup, one more
Yeah.
question for Lorelei. So what was the feedback that you got on the dance from students? Or were you able to assess how kids felt about it?
Yeah, so it was very positive. Kids really liked it outside, which I was surprised about because it was pretty chilly, but they really liked the atmosphere that we had created out there with all the lights and the tables and the DJ setup. It was really successful, and I mean, people always complain about the music, but we only got positive feedback from the music, so that was good. But yeah, overall, it was a really positive outcome,
That's
and I
great.
think kids enjoyed it.
Great.
Yeah, I can say that, personally, we just enjoyed the fact that like student council was able to have something, especially throughout COVID. It really gave students an opportunity to like go out and have fun again and be able to do dances, because being a student from the junior high, that's a big thing to be able to do dances and having that again. So it's just a tradition that it's amazing to still continue and give us that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great.
Great update. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brings us to budget, Mrs. Noyes Miller.
Well, we already went over our meeting at joint committee meeting for our central office budget. Our next scheduled meeting is January 29th at 8:30 a.m. and that is a full budget review.
Is that all day?
Yeah.
Till we're
As
done.
long as it takes.
Till we're done.
Yeah.
There's no date.
Nah, we can get him out of water. We're tough.
We can make it.
We can make it. Just
Next
get it
is
done.
technical, Mr. Gillum. No meeting. Curriculum, Mrs. Barnacle.
Yeah, we had one last night, a curriculum meeting, our first one for this year. We had two major kind of things on the agenda. One was an update on in-person learning, and the second was the junior high and high school handbook revisions. Our conversation with Lee and Greg, in my estimation anyway, was wonderful. They brought so much to the table, and I think in all the time that I've been here and part of committees, I haven't had that quality of conversation during a meeting. And I think others on the committee feel that way too. They did mention to us that there is a high level of anxiety, that things aren't perfect, as you can imagine. And just having come from the Mass conference, I feel that every school is definitely struggling with this. And so I think we sort of went into a mode of brainstorming and thinking of things that we might be able to do to help. And one of the things they talked about was the sort of change in role for the SRO. Now, those of you who've been on the committee for a long time, we sort of spent a lot of time talking about what the SRO ought to do. But what I heard from all of them was the SR role is beginning to evolve into a really meaningful role. And that person, the new, I'm sorry, I forget his name.
Bill.
Nick, that's right. He definitely is a big, big help with social and emotional type things, as well as teaching actual courses. Things that maybe he would have anyway, but made more meaningful by the fact that there is a high level of anxiety amongst staff and kids. And so we talked about the SRO role and the old hall monitor idea. And talked about why people loved having the hall monitors, of all things, you wouldn't think, but people talk about that all the time. Why did they ever take away the hall monitors? So at some point, I think the school committee needs to have, as a whole, a discussion about what we could do to help with this high level of anxiety. And particularly the bathrooms are a problem, like they have been in the past. I'll just say that. And vaping has come back full force, so we need to keep our eyes on that and see what we can do, I think, to help out. So if anybody has any ideas or would like to come to the next curriculum meeting and maybe discuss one of those ideas, it would be a great thing, I think. Thank you.
When's your next meeting, Pat?
Jody, I think it's
January 10th.
January 10th, yeah.
Thank you, Mrs. Barnacle. Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Yes, we have 5 policies before you on second reading. There were no changes made at first reading, and therefore on behalf of the subcommittee, I move that each of the policies from IHB through IGBH be either adopted or rescinded on second reading as indicated on the agenda.
Motion will be brought to the floor. It doesn't require a second. It's a recommendation of the Bylaw and Policy Subcommittee. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the chair will call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries.
Our next meeting is this Thursday, the 18th, here at the junior high at 10 a.m.
Thank you. Negotiations? No meeting, no report. Building and physical plant?
We haven't had a meeting, but we will be having a meeting on December 13th.
December 13th. Great. All right, that brings us to communications. There's a couple of communications items in your packets. Number one is the update from DESE on the mask mandate extension through January 15th. And then there are some strategic plan documents also included. Any questions on either of the communication items? All right, that will bring us to our superintendent's report. Dr. Nozick.
Thank you very much. So can we take them out of order? Is that okay?
Yep.
So before we jump into that MCAS presentation that Jody and the principals worked on for you tonight, I did include in your packet an email and some documents I received from the Department of Ed at the beginning of the month related to the request of OSA Charter School expansion and amendment, looking to expand and add some additional seats for the middle level, as well as expanding through the high school. And the documents I did forward to you, and I have printed out copies. I think I got to everybody tonight, but if you need one, I have one, and it appears that it will be presented. The goal is to present for approval or request at the February, I believe, Board of Ed meeting. So if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to take them, but I did just receive that information, so I don't know how you want to proceed.
Mrs. Randall?
I'd like to make a motion for Erin and yourself to engage with legal counsel on the review of the OSA application.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Randall, seconded by Mr. Haggerty, directing Dr. Nozick and myself to consult with legal counsel regarding this application, and I assume what our options are as a district. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Mrs. Randall. All right, and that brings us to
The
MCAS.
MCAS presentation, which is the focus of the evening.
I don't think so, but thank you. They'll need them for their presentation. So you definitely have a copy of this, but I will show this on the screen as well. Sometimes the numbers don't look good in the copy, but will on the screen. And I'm not gonna bore you too much with data, because once you actually see the first slide, it's replicated throughout, so it does get easier. Last year, in spring of 2021, the junior and senior high school participated in the next generation MCAS test. That was the second time for the high school and the fourth time for the junior high. Typically, when we have year-to-year data, consecutive year-to-year data, we have accountability reports for each school and how they compared to their targets. That does not exist in this report because it was interrupted in 2020, so we do not have that sequential year-to-year data. So I will compare to 2019 and show you some historical trends over the 2 or 4 year period, okay? So, I'm sorry, I just went through that slide. Here's slide. In the next generation test, now all grades 3 through 10 are participating in the same type of test. So the achievement levels are the same, which is great. It's basically a 30-point scale for each category. Not meeting and exceeding starts at 440 and all the way to exceeding expectations to 560 points. The target for all students is the 500 mark, which is the meeting and exceeding category. That's what we would like all students to achieve. So that is the achievement level. Remember last year we were in a hybrid model for learning. That was our learning model. Kids were in 1 week and then learning remotely the second week, except for special populations. So just know that when we look at data from 2019 to 2021, it may be reflective in that hybrid model. I will also say because of the hybrid model, the junior high only experienced a modified test. They had only one session of, and 100% of the students took it in person, paper-based. This is typically a computer-based test, but last year we received a waiver because of our technical, basically the use of the Chromebooks, that we were able to receive the paper-based, so all students in person, paper-based. The high school though did it in person, computer-based. So not that it matters, but test-taking skills do change from one platform to the other. So there's a lot of variations in the two testing areas. I'll start with grade 7. There's a lot on this screen. I will point out that the first meeting and exceeding combined school score, you'll see it as 54. That's percentage points. Our target is to get 75% of our students achieving a meeting or exceeding score. But you will see that for English language arts, that's 11 points higher than the state. And for mathematics, it's 19 percentage points higher than the state. So they're exceeding very well. Then it breaks down how many, what percentage met the exceeding, the meeting, the 4 categories. But we really want to focus in on that meeting and exceeding combined score because the target of 500 at 75% really gets us above where we need to be, those targets. So the number of students who took the test in both ELA and math, it's off by 1, maybe somebody was absent that day, but so the participation rate for the junior high for 7th grade was relatively the same. 95% is the threshold. It is the target number that the state would like us to get, so we hit that target. The average scaled score, as I said, we want to be 500 or better. In grade 7 for both ELA and math, that was the case. And then of the 276 students in ELA that took the test, 265 of those students were in the SGP average. And what that means, SGP is like a comparative academic peer group. It compares students in the same grade with the same relative test history. So if students didn't test in here in 2019, there's no SGP for them. So that needs to be year to year. So there's some, and that could have been students we take in from not school choice, school choice applications, so that's where it could have been. So there's the discrepancy in those numbers, I just want you to make sure you understand where the numbers are. In English language arts, the achievement level, I give a history over time, a 4-year period. For English language arts, we want to get more students in the meeting and exceeding categories. If you look, it's a bit of an upward trend. We are moving in the right direction for ELA. More students in those 2 upper categories than the lower categories. And I say students, but I'm referring to percentage of students, so it's not number of students. In mathematics, it's a slight decrease over the 4-year period. Any questions with if you turn the page, I then point out subgroups because part of accountability is looking at subgroup data. Our biggest subgroups are economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. You can see over a 4-year period, I give the annual data and then I give the historical data. Over a 4-year period for economically disadvantaged group, we do have a positive trend. Again, more students in the upper categories than lower categories. And the same thing with students with disabilities. So I give the annual data of 2021 and then the historical. For the math subgroups, it's a little bit different of a trend. For math subgroups for economically disadvantaged, we have a negative trend, less students performing in the upper categories, and same with students with disabilities. That's achievement. Now for growth. If you look at growth, it's achievement and growth compared to the state. Now this is all students, doesn't matter subgroup, it's all students as a subgroup. So all 200-something students who took the test. And the star is the state. At achievement level is at SGP is 36.1, and at achievement level is 43%, but the junior high was at, or 7th grade particularly, was 44.9, and at 54%. That is a positive trend from 2019 for growth and achievement. For math, if you look at the state and grade 7 math, it's certainly increased from the state, but it is a negative trend from 2019. Now the idea in this chart is to go as top right as you possibly can. We want high achievement and high growth. But please know, the higher the achievement is, sometimes the more difficult the growth becomes. So we're right in a good middle range for 7th grade math and ELA, but we certainly have movement that can happen. Now we'll move to grade 8. I'll go a little faster, but it's the same data. So if you look at the meeting and exceeding categories, percentage-wise for ELA at the school level was 47%. That is 6 percentage points higher than the state. For math, 41%, that's 9 percentage points higher than the state. And grade 8 is 53, for science is 53%, and that was 12 percentage points higher than the state. I will say that, as the students move up in a comprehensive test, those types of critical thinking skills also increase. So therefore, maybe why the meeting and exceeding expectations category is lower than it has been in the past. It is considerably lower than the past for 8th grade. It breaks down the by category, and then the number of students that were included in that data were 267 for ELA and mathematics 269. So great population of students taking the test. And the average scale score for each content area is stated over on the right at 34. Our target is 50, so it's low in the 8th grade for SGP. And there's no SGP for science, again, because SGP needs to be consecutive years.
Yeah.
You will see for English language arts over a historical 4-year trend, it's somewhat consistent, you know, it's not, you know, show glaring with any negative, but somewhat consistent. And then for mathematics, there's a negative trend overall.
Do we think the mathematics is is it all right if I have questions now?
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
do
sure.
we think the mathematics is really about the COVID year?
So, and Greg, more about schedules. So we know math is sequential, day to day, they, certainly in-person learning is best, but there was also some, drop schedule too that stopped that consistency happening as regularly as possible. 7th grade tested well mathematically, so could be a combination of complexity in the critical thinking and day-to-day learning.
And I would say too, just to try, I see some of the negative growth data is reflective of that particular 2019 test, just looking at the numbers in there. That it was a high achievement year in 2019 in terms of, so it's hard to grow from a high,
Yeah.
that's the downside of the data, that if you have an excellent group, then it's hard for the next, as the data comes in.
If your baseline is set
Yeah.
high,
Yeah, so
that
that's-
standard
They
is
have
hard
to
to.
keep that standard.
Correct, so if you just look at 2019, at the percentage of kids who exceeded expectations in both grades were high. So when it went back to kind of the average of the 2 years before 2019 and then last year were very similar. The 2019 group was exceedingly higher than, it was like 7 or 8% points higher. So that bar was set really high for student growth percentage.
Okay, I see. So the student growth percentage is not for them in prior years, it's the same, it's the year over year. for
Year
that
over
grade
year
level.
with the same group of like it's comparing academic peers. So if you and I test similarly over time, we're put in this bucket, and
Right.
that bucket is compared to, as to how those students in that bucket test to each other,
Okay,
so-
so it would be but it is,
year to year.
it's year to year, so it's not like I'm in 7th grade, I take the test, and then in
And the
8th
growth
grade,
rate.
I'm compared to what I was. It's the similar kids in the
Compared to-
7th grade again, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And then the flip side too, just the content area itself, math is very practice-based. So when the kids were at home in front of their screens, they eliminated the time the teacher does a 20-minute lesson and then circulates the room and reviews like with individual kids on a regular basis. So that remote piece does, in my opinion, impact mathematics more than
Sure.
most of the other content areas as well.
Makes sense.
And the state data indicated that as well, that
Yeah.
mathematics was a challenge, definitely more dependent on the
Mhm.
in-student learning time, as well as these are children who went from March to June in 7th grade content standards, and then went to the fully remote, then went to the hybrid, so,
Yeah.
which may sort of dovetail to the freshmen who we know are transitioning and the greater support we have to give them around all of this.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right, thank you.
There's a lot of factors. They could have been out of practice from having the year off, the hybrid learning, there's so many factors. Will be, as testing becomes more consistent over time again, we certainly will be able to look more specifically at those variables. Okay, now subgroups for grade 8. Again, I focus on economically disadvantaged students with disabilities, because those are our highest population of special groups. But high needs is in there too, and that's a combination of many groups. I didn't show a historical trend, but that'll come up in the future when accountability eventually comes back to the table. So I don't want to forget about that group, but it is a combination of student populations. So in grade 8 ELA subgroup, they get I give you the individual scores above and a historical trend over time. They're doing pretty well. There's a positive trend over time. For students with disabilities, though, a negative trend. And you can imagine a hybrid learning for our most disabled students, so our needy students. For math subgroups, again, individual scores above, economically disadvantaged is showing a negative trend overtime, and then students with disabilities as well. If we look at 8th grade achievement and growth, a little bit below the marginal, the middle road, we want to be in the 40 to 60 mark for SGP. So you can see ELA is just above the state for SGP and achievement in both categories. I'll turn it over to Greg for improvement opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, we're just, I think we don't want to write off last year just as being a difficult year, because we definitely found some areas that we can work on and improve on. And reality is, the online component for these kids, as we get them ready, we talk college to career readiness. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, the online component to life is just the way it's coming that full circle that way. So whether it was a good or positive or negative experience, a lot of our kids had both. We had kids who did real well through this. I had some kids who struggled in school when they had the remote option, excelled, and kids who couldn't be in school, it just plummeted them. And part of it is also, I would say, 8th grade specific in math. It's a fast-paced content year, and it took 2 months for us to figure out how to get in, for about a month for us to figure out how to do remote teaching, in person / at home. Then kids were trying to learn how to do it both ways. Parents were trying to learn how to do it both ways to help out. So it was just an interesting year in terms of the delivery of services. But as we get back to it, one of the biggest things we'll do here at the junior high, and our math and ELA teachers have already completed a professional development training on STAR testing. And we also have IXL both in math and English. It's math and ELA, so that's just an additional resource for kind of monitoring progress and growth. Those two tools use, STAR testing generally is a 3-time-a-year testing program, and we don't want to just test our kids all the time, but coming back off of last year, this will give us a good glimpse into where each individual kid's gaps are, if they have gaps, which even some of our strongest learners have some gaps from the last 2 years. So between the STAR testing to help identify them, and IXL is a program that will go through specific skills. And so if we identify kids' gaps, we can use the IXL resource to then target specific skills on those kids. And that's the UDL component of it, where we'll meet kids where they're at instead of them coming to where we need them to be. This is a year where we really are going to have to kind of peel back the layers of content and curriculum and find kids where they need us, and not really, I mean, we're going to hold the bar high because that's who we are, but we really need to support kids in bigger picture things with social emotional learning, as well as we talked in the last meeting about. So we're really going to use those platforms to measure progress and growth on a kind of individual level. And then I do believe that you'll see the reflection of that in the MCAS testing at the end of the year, that we will have strategies that are more targeted on an individual level than probably ever before. Because again, some kids' gaps are minimal, and some kids develop some large learning gaps, because some of our 7th graders who were remote through the end of the year missed almost a year and a half of full in-person learning. So there's a lot of other factors, and plus middle school in general of adolescence. So put those all together, we really have to meet the kids where they're at this year. And those are kind of our strategies. Our special ed department has been in high gear. Brenda Looney was here earlier. I couldn't compliment her enough as our director of special ed, because that department is busting their tails to get our kids back on track as best as they can. I can't imagine having a student with a learning disability during the past year and a half. So that's really, we're targeting those groups. I think our low economic subgroup is one to focus on, target as well. We saw some growth in some of their schools, especially in ELA. I think because we're fortunate enough to be able to provide resources to families over the past year and a half that some other schools probably didn't have the same luxury. I know many do, but we were able to pretty much give everyone a Chromebook, iPad, any kind of technology device that needed one. We were able to provide support with families who needed it. We had Greg Ross was here, worked with Cox and Charter Cable to get families hooked up with internet. So I think we are trending in the right direction in supporting those subgroups to the best of our ability. But this is going to be a year of kind of slow build on individual kids, and I think they're going to be fine. I'm confident in our staff and where we're headed already. And we're only through round 1 of STAR testing, but I think we're going to see that reflected on the MCAS scores next year as well, that we'll be back on track pretty consistently among all subgroups next year. So, anyone has any questions?
Do you think it was for the English? Do you think it was the fact that we were trending up still? Was it just the nature of English, even remote with Chrome, and if you have Chromebooks and the gear, you would,
I think the nature of the beast of the content of English is a area where like you can still read books online or at home, and then have a lecture. I mean, it was impressive to me to go into reading classes last year, and I can hear voices over the speakers in classrooms having a discussion with kids in class, where you can kind of lead that. Writing can be on Google Docs where the kids can see, teachers can correct actively what they're doing. And I think some of the positives that came out of COVID, not all was negative, is the use of Google Classroom has made a more interactive student-to-teacher kind of relationship where on an academic level where there's more interactive grading going on. Just the other day in an ELA class, I observed myself of an English lesson where they rewrote an assignment until it was basically perfect, and they did it over and over again because the focus right now that we have in ELA is on the writing component. And so it's as tough as that sounds, it works, it does. And so, but the online piece of that works with ELA, whereas math, I do believe math, as a kid who struggled with math a little bit, as the teacher who can walk around after a lesson's been given, do group work with kids. Last year we couldn't even do group work because you couldn't even sit across from a strong math student with a weaker math student, work your way through it because they'd have to be 6 feet apart, not facing each other. So I think just the nature of the content allowed for ELA to be successful through it.
thanks.
Now we'll move to senior high. Similarly, I'll speak to the correlation to the state and then the trend, just to move a little quicker. Grade 10, meeting and exceeding, had 82% of their 158 students meet or exceed get the higher two categories. That was 18 percentage points higher than the state for ELA. And then for math, 80%, and that's 28% higher than the state. So pretty astounding there. And again, that target score of 75 is clearly met in the 10th grade. 75%. SGP also very healthy and strong, target of 50 for ELA at 65.2 and math 49, very healthy. Trending over time, over a 2-year trend, again, not as historically charged as the junior high, but still there. We're looking at upward trend for ELA, more students in those upper categories, and a lower trend or a negative trend in the mathematics area. For subgroups are a little bit different. I do give the economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities singular data, but no, there's only one 2-year trend data graph, because when there's less than 20 students in a subgroup, there's no comparative data, they just don't do it, the population's too small. But, so you will see for economically disadvantaged, it was 55% meeting and exceeding in 2019 to 68% in 2021. So definitely an upward trend. If you look at math, subgroups, for economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities, the year to year, again, no graph for students with disabilities because the population was less than 20. You're going to see that in 2019, there was a 53% of students met or exceeded. In 2021, 65%, so a positive trend. For achievement and growth for ELA and math, clearly look at ELA, we're getting up to the top right-hand corner, exactly where we want to be. Exceeded the state and heading definitely in the area we want to be for achievement and growth. And for mathematics, high achievement, but growth, again, once you hit that baseline, sometimes it's hard to get through the threshold of the high growth. And you can see comparative change from 2019, the positive change from 2019 in ELA, and also a negative change in, from 2019 for math. So I wrote the statistics down below under the chart. This is here, sorry. Now we'll move to technical. For meeting and exceeding categories, for ELA was 56%, which was 8 percentage points below the state, and for mathematics, 57%, 5 percentage points below the state. Looking at their historical change, they're in upward trends for both ELA and math from previous years, meaning they have more in meeting and exceeding than the previous year. The subgroup for ELA, for the economically disadvantaged, is trending down, and again, for students with disabilities, the population's too small to grow.
The participation rate
Yeah.
for the 10th grade at 96%, is that, what is, that's not of everybody, right? Because it was optional, or,
Well, it was optional, but,
okay.
yeah, so I looked at, it's funny, because I did look at enrollment, and many students, I don't think many students opted out, I think many students actually took the exam. It wasn't far off from their populations in each grade. So 96% is the cut to total population.
Of 10th grade.
10th grade, but it's two different schools, it's broken down to two different schools. So if you add the vocational students of 118 students in grade 10 for ELA, and then add the 158 students in ELA for academic, that's giving you your population of 10th graders.
So now, the 11th graders that could take it,
Okay.
is there information in here at all?
They're taking it, the ones that
Maybe
did not
up to
test,
tomorrow.
So,
they're in the middle
no,
of testing
the
now.
kids that,
Didn't take
11
it last year as
yeah.
10th graders.
so they're, as 10th graders, they didn't have it, so then they had the option as 11th graders. Is there information in here, or is it, we
No.
just don't have
11th
it?
graders are
taking it
retaking now.
No, I understand what you're
No.
saying.
Yeah.
So you're talking about this year's seniors,
Yes,
last year's
Oh.
11th graders,
Yeah.
who in the 10th grade, MCAS was waived.
exactly.
No, they were invited to take it optional if they wanted to take it and work toward the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship and the Stanley Koplik Certificate. So that was an option for them. It is really not a representative test base.
Okay, that's
And-
what I was wondering, because I feel like it would skew it way high,
Yeah.
right?
It
Because
would.
of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
That's all.
and all of those folks that did not take it who were grade 10 last year, who are grade 11 this year, are currently sitting the retest now. That's an approximately 38 students in total. And then we also have an additional population of current grade 12 students who did not choose to take it last year, but want to take it in order to also try and achieve that John and
Okay.
Abigail Adams Scholarship. The state did allow for that variance this year,
Okay,
so we do have that.
thank you.
Okay, so last two screens for achievement, the subgroups. Economically disadvantaged is showing a positive trend for ELA, and for mathematics, also a positive trend. For achievement and growth combined scores, you'll see that although SGP is low, SGP is lower than the state. Actually, for ELA, they're both, it's lower than the state for both, in grade 10 for vocational. And then for math, it's higher than the state as well as SGP. Now I'll turn it over to the principals for their improvement opportunities.
Well, for the tech side, one thing that we are doing, especially as it applies to math, is The frameworks for tech are created in what's called the VTE, the Vocational Technical Frameworks. So within those, strand 3 is the embedded academics. So over time, we've done a crosswalk between the academics. The interesting dynamic within tech is you can have a student who can do poorly in a traditional math class, but as it applies in the tech shop, they're able to soar. For example, geometry. Kids will have difficulty in a geometry class, but when you, in carpentry, call it rise over run, it clicks. Case in point, if y'all know the safety complex in town, you know the red wheel? That was made by the carpentry students who had to take the flat boards and create a circle. So the math to get that done, as I watched those 4 kids do that, was amazing. But yet still 3 of those kids struggled with MCAS. But yet still, as it applied to what they were doing in their field, it worked. We have kids who, do poorly in an algebra class, but when they move into manufacturing, they're on a 3-axis machine applying trigonometry. So it's basically the application. So one thing we do, and I know Dr. Nosek has been through observing with classes with me in the past, before COVID, and we have math day, and that's when they totally focus on those embedded academics for math within the shop areas. And the embedded academics apply to 3 specific areas, amazingly: English, science, and math. So it's basically, over time, what I've done is kind of given the teachers exactly what the roadmap is to try to make that work. So it's trying to have kids see the total application in all of those areas as it applies to their field, to kind of bring those scores. So I was actually quite surprised and pleased by MCAS results, because I know that I was very concerned as a parent, but also as a principal, of where the learning loss may have been over the past year and a third, or year and a quarter. And I thought kids performed better than I actually, and that's actually 7, 8, and through 10. Kids performed better than I thought they would have, given what they've had to deal with over the past year and a quarter.
We also, at the high school, we've created a learning lab to address some of the students who are in that gap. So we have that they have some directed learning there with regard to both math and ELA, some study skills that help them to focus on that independently when they're not with their teachers, and then communication with their teachers to help support those skills and needs. So that's one thing that we have done. We'll continue to analyze data, which we have. Our math department and English department have certainly looked at that and looked at their own curriculum and the mapping for their curriculum. Though tough for our math department, they made some decisions with regard to what things they could put on hold for its different levels to focus, so that they could focus on strengthening the core skills that they need in order to move on. So we have those things happening. Other departments have also, we have our social studies department, our science department also looked at the data in science, not just with science itself, but they invested in looking at the English language arts data and also science with regard to the math data and their curriculum and how they can help to support those skills as well. We do have our National Honor Society students who we do match up with students for tutoring, and we'll continue to work with high school students to bring interns into classrooms to help with some of the things that Greg spoke of that we missed during COVID, which those students have really helped in the past, those strong academic math students, science students, English students, to be in the classrooms to help work with the lower levels and work with them on the skills. So that's something that we've missed, but is beginning to increase again in order to assist there and give some peer tutoring.
And just one thing we do is, as we go through the test item analysis, and Edwin Analytics, as Jody could talk about, is the data that DESE now collects for kids and learning is amazing. Anybody who follows baseball, and they'll do the weird you know, the guy's hitting 300 in night games on the West Coast after. That's what DESE has for data at this level. The data is phenomenal. And what we've done is when you do a test analysis, it's sitting down with, for example, the math department saying, these are how the questions are formulated on MCAS. Not necessarily the way you would do that in your testing, but you really need to start giving kids that type of questions so they practice. So that's been an ongoing conversation. The other thing is also looking at the scope and sequence, specifically as we identify those students who have been failing in MCAS or even in the old needs improvement, now they're not meeting, and saying, okay, where are we missing out? What questions are you missing? What is the trajectory of courses that you've had in the scope and sequence? And is there something we have to do to assist the students? And the other thing is building within grants tutoring opportunities for those students by teachers to, whether it's after school, during school, whatever the model works best for the students, to provide them whatever support services they need as they continue to grow. And even beyond the tutoring, it's different models and thinking outside the box, in as much as MCAS provides certain levels of appeals. And we have gone down that road with several students over the years, whether it's a portfolio appeal or whatever, to really get our special ed teachers on board to kind of work through that process so the kids find success.
And that's what we have for you. Any questions?
Mr. Haggerty?
Julia, thank you very much for that presentation, and I appreciate the comments from the three principals as well. My general impression is there's some things to be happy with here, particularly in grade 7 and grade 10 in achievement and growth. And I often worry that when documents like this are released, that people look at them and they don't necessarily understand them. And they're open to interpretation. And as we all know, in this day and age on social media, people love to interpret things. I'm just wondering if, and I realize that, good Lord, you have enough work and so on with the principals, but if we could put together some sort of a narrative highlighting some of those things that you pointed out, particularly the positive aspects with respect to some of the things. And also, some of the comments, you said earlier that sometimes it's very difficult to experience growth when you already have a high level of achievement. I think Greg also mentioned that. And that's the type of information in many respects that I think people need to hear. Seeing this on our website, I'm not sure that's where we're going to put it or not, but I don't think it helps the reputation of the school, because we really are pretty goddamn good, excuse me. And I think that we need to let more people know that.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments, and I can easily write a narrative of positive trends. Most of this data is on the school and district profiles that the DESC gives. It's not even out of Edwin. I really had difficulty figuring out what was the best way to present data so that, and at least there would be a narrative to what is out there for anyone's access, not just mine.
Yeah, the presentation I thought was so much more informative and articulated, where the strengths are, and also pointed out weaknesses, but likewise what the plan of action is.
Right.
And people need to know that, not just that that we have a problem in this particular area, but what we're going to do about it, and what we are doing about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
More work for the comms director.
It seems so, to what end?
Pardon me?
To what end, this testing? I mean, we're all educators, we all know we have to test all the time, and it's true. I mean, you can definitely learn things from this, but when I heard Mark saying the technical kids have to learn a new language almost to be able to even take that, to what end? Does it improve them as they go off to college or off to work?
I think that's I meet with a group that meets with the commissioner, and I know the superintendents do also. I know that the commissioner is not a fan of MCAS as a high stakes test. He's very clear about that. The testing isn't the issue, the high stakes, because I think the frameworks really kind of leveled the playing field as far as what is being taught. That's a good thing. And I think the testing is important, but I think, again, I think the high stakes part of it is the issue. And I think as it changes or it evolves, I think you're going to see more of a practical application in the testing. Because I think that's important, because it's like for me personally, I see that specifically in math with my kids. The English, you see it in our report on the improvement opportunities. It's writing business plans using English more. You know, if you're going out as a carpentry and you're going to put a proposal for you want a job, those types of things. I think it's more of the application of how you do it as opposed to just a test to make it make sense.
Thank you, Jody.
Good question, Matt.
Other questions or discussion on the topic? Okay. We have covered unfinished business. We have no new business, public access. Brings us to, for the good of the order, open forum. Anybody that wishes to be recognized. Mr. Haggerty, you are on a roll today.
I'm on a roll. It was that sugar with the coffee.
For Mr. Haggerty from now on.
And the cookies. So I just wanted to take an opportunity, and I hope that Pat and Christine will join me. We had a great opportunity this year to finally have an in-person conference on the Cape. And while none of us got out to the golf course, we did manage to attend some very interesting workshops. And I wanted to just share with you, and I realize the hour's late, but at least some general impressions of some of the ones that I attended. Pat, you may chime in and add things, Christine. Sometimes we were in the same workshop. Other times we were in separate ones, so chime in or add your own if you would. There were a number. It was a limited conference because of COVID. They closed it very early, but they did provide virtual attendance, and it was good that we were able to be there in person and to interact with many of our colleagues from throughout the state. The first workshop that I happened to attend that afternoon was one on collective bargaining, which was with another law firm, and it was facilitated by a gentleman by Mark Terry from Myrick and O'Connell, and it was interesting. They talked about the challenges of the past year, none of which we have to tell you because the political divide in the nation, COVID-19, bargaining for COVID, teacher shortages, union activism, all things that we've heard about as we've continued with our efforts this year. A couple of things that came out of that particular workshop, which I think are important. Number one, that school committees, you need to be very cautious when negotiating contracts not to include language that might infringe upon the right of the school committee to make policy. And there's more of an effort these days to approach that because they want to take the policy initiative out of the hands of the school committee. Number two, to be careful when you commit to anything, particularly in side letters or so forth, because the circumstances of what happens today changes tomorrow. So you want to be very careful what you're committing to. Thirdly, defining job responsibilities, they encourage you to think broadly because you may want, and it goes back to, in some respects, what Michael was saying earlier in the meeting regarding, the communications, and eventually we may be able to have a part-time position or whatever. And make sure that you think broadly of the job description so you can add or change duties. And it suggests the school committee assist the strength of their management rights clauses. because more and more every year they get eaten away. It was interesting because one of the things that he noted, which somewhat surprised us in light of our experience here in the district, that a number of districts in the state did not get involved with memorandums of understanding with respect to COVID. That there seemed to be more informal discussions and agreement between the school committees and administration and the teachers associations with respect to COVID. So that was somewhat surprising to hear, because sometimes when you live in a bubble, you think everything is like what you're experiencing, and so apparently that wasn't the case. Another workshop I attended was school districts at the Center of Polarized Community Debates, and that one, I see Mr. Valenzuela.
It's a good thing I'm wearing a mask.
Yes, and he's not going to use expletives, because it focused on some of the districts that are experiencing or had experienced difficulties with such things as deciding to eliminate holidays, changing the names of schools because they don't correspond with the community values at that point. And it certainly gave us a lot to think about with respect to those types of issues when they're raised. Another workshop was the Anti-Racism in Practice, an introduction to initiatives for developing equity for students. And I think someone mentioned that earlier in the meeting about when we're talking about the comfort level of students, that there are students who don't necessarily always feel comfortable. We may think, sitting here at this table, that everyone feels comfortable because that's their general impression, and especially if we're dealing with our immediate family households, but that there are students, some of color, some of different politics, some of who are different sexual orientation, who don't always feel necessary. And when you talk about those things, how many times have we heard it in the last 2 weeks in terms of schools in the area, in the Boston area? One of the things that that particular workshop did that I thought was very meaningful, and it would be interesting for you to try it just for once. Take a piece of paper and put 1, 2, 3, 4 in each of the 4 corners of the paper. Then put your name in the middle. And then for each of those numbers, identify something or list something that identifies you as a person. And then once you've done that, take and cut off a corner. And that corner with that particular characteristic is gone. Now what's your life like that without that characteristic? And I'll tell you, it was rather interesting. I ended up cutting off the one that said I was white. And boy, all of a sudden I had to do some thinking. There was an equity thing about equity audits. You hear a lot of those these days as they become very trendy. It was a very disappointing workshop. They talked a lot about doing it. They didn't tell you how to do it. And they talked a lot about the price involved. For example, Framingham paid $75,000 to have an equity audit of their school district. So, and I'm not sure we're going to get involved in the very near future on a commercial basis anyways. And then lastly, the other workshop that I thought was really beneficial was the one that inspired Mike to work to get some money in the budget for communication, because communication has changed. As I said earlier in the meeting, it's not newsletters anymore. It's not websites necessarily. It's social media, and you think about it, and in what you see constantly, and the fact that in school districts generally, and I think someone mentioned earlier, well, you better be careful of Facebook. But on the other hand, you've got to recognize how it can be used effectively for your position. And maybe it does mean you're going to have to hire someone who's going to monitor the websites and do all this, but that's how people are getting information. And if you continue to put your head in the sand and don't recognize that, then you're never gonna get your message. And what's gonna happen is those negative forces are gonna continue to use it, and they're gonna use it effectively to basically destroy what's very good in your school system. So that was my 2 cents. Christine, you want to jump in, or?
Wow.
I was just about to cue the Emmy music. The microphone's
I think
She's heard it all, so that's
we
why.
sat in quite a few of the same discussions together.
Yeah.
Erin and I did participate in one regarding declining enrollment, the impact it has on schools, namely the far western part of the state, Berkshire County, and their struggles over the years to try to get one regionalization of 17 towns, which I'm sure you know logistically really can't
Think about
happen,
it.
and not everyone's buying into it. They do a lot of studying, but not a lot of doing.
Yeah.
So that was enlightening for me because I'm a Wales representative. I'm on that school committee, and we have significant declining enrollment. So it was eye-opening, and it kind of started some wheels turning, and being more proactive on that. Another one, I would say the one that I really took a lot from was the last one, the
Yeah.
open forum.
Yeah.
And that was Project 361 alumni, namely 2 girls. One is in college, and I forget her name right now. I didn't take notes, so it's all in here. And another one it's in there somewhere, Bill.
I know.
And
I'm sure.
the other one's a senior, and they both spoke from the heart, but beautifully, about the epidemic that we are all seeing, not just here, of the struggles our students are seeing. Suicidal ideation, suicide rate is through the roof. It's the #1 killer of young adults ages 11 to 22. That's gut-wrenching. And they're kids that you typically don't think it would be. It doesn't know a social economic boundary. It's everyone and anyone. And some things that they're implementing. One of them started a organization called 13 Reasons to Fly. Check it out. It's amazing what this young woman has been through and how she turned her experiences around to empower others and help them. So it really got us thinking and talking about how can we bring this into our schools to help every student. It turns out that every teacher, staff member in our buildings, every single one, sub, janitor, cafeteria worker, we're all in the mental health business now. We need to just stop and open ourselves up and listen to these students. These are our children. They're our neighbors' children. I don't want to have one number of any of those rates. We've had it in the past. We can't have it now. So if we all just work together, really work as a team and support our staff, and I don't know what we can do for them, but we need to help them do something.
Those young women, it was incredible, seriously.
It really was.
Because it was adults sitting in almost shock, and hundreds of
Yes.
adults. Being there, being joyful to be with friends again, but to see that whole sort of wave of sadness on the other side, and the kids being so eloquent about it. It was the best thing, I think, in the conference.
To the point, brutally honest, to the point. This isn't just someone else's problem. This is our problem.
Yeah.
This is education's problem right
Mhm.
now. I'm sorry, MCAS is great, but I don't care about you.
That's what I
You
said.
can go to
to
heck,
what
I don't
point?
care. We need to get these kids to help.
Jody.
Look what you've done, Bill, inspiring people. Did you have anything else?
No, I'm fine.
I would say the only other thing, and I said it earlier, I sat through 2 or 3 sessions that were stale. And I thought to myself, we should be the ones teaching them. So next year, our district will be well represented on panels because some of these other school committees really don't know what they're doing, and we could teach them.
Just one other little note, the 2 students Christine was referring to, who Project 351 students.
Yes.
So when you meet our new, for this year group, just know that they're joining an organization that is doing fantastic
Incredible
things.
work, yeah.
And yeah, I know conventions are tough for people working, as opposed to some of us
Yeah,
retired
who
old
have
guys.
nothing else to do, right, yeah.
But if you can, and maybe we should be encouraging our division colleagues to sponsor those types of workshops, because those are informative. And, you know, I would have never thought about some of those things, other than sitting in that room listening.
Right.
You know, and then it hits you right over the head. So if you ever get a chance, and I'm sure that we can, I'll speak for the administration, I'm sure they can find some money to at least send you to a workshop, because it would be worthwhile, I think, and help us to be better committee members.
Yeah.
The, some of the seminars were actually, they're posted on the MASC website, so you can
Many
catch
of
them on a
them are
replay.
Yes,
Yeah.
some are on YouTube too.
Oh, perfect,
Yeah.
okay,
We can send out those letters.
yes,
We
yeah.
all have a subscription as
Yep.
members. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Noyes-Moore, seconded by Mrs. Cunningham. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
See me on Happy Thanksgiving.